I'm a web psychologist, which means that I look at the way in which our online environments influence our behaviors. I'm going to start with a short story, and then we're going to have a look at these 5 different areas. So there once was a little girl who couldn't sit still in school. Her grades were suffering, her mother didn't know what to do, and the teacher was exasperated. She didn't know what was wrong with her little girl. They tried everything. And the teacher said that maybe there's something wrong with her. But the mother wasn't happy with this explanation. So she went and got the advice of a specialist. So she took her little girl to the specialist and she said, "This is what's happening with my girl in school. Can you please help? I don't know what else to do." So the specialist listened to what the mother had to say. And she said to the little girl, "Well, I've heard everything that your mum said. I'm going to put the radio on for you. And your mum and I are going to stand over here and we're going to wait. We're going to have a little chat. You stay in the room." They close the door. The little girl stays in the room. And as soon as the parents left, as the mother and the specialist left, the little girl started to dance to the music that was playing on the radio. And the specialist turns and he says to the mother, "There's nothing wrong with your little girl. She's not sick. She's a dancer." And her mother, very relieved that there was nothing wrong with her little niña, said, "Okay, great, well, I'm going to take her to a dance school." So she did. She took her little girl to the dance school, and the little girl was happy, because she was surrounded by other people who had to move to think. So how is this relevant to the talk that I'm giving to you today? Well, this little girl ended up being one of the world's most famous choreographers. She devised the choreography for Cats and Phantom of the Opera, and she is now a multimillionaire, and she's given joy and pleasure to millions of people from across the world. But none of this wouldn't have happened if her mother didn't have the insight to try and figure out what would be best for her daughter. This is what happened. The teacher misattributed the little girl's behavior. She didn't know what was wrong, and she thought there was something sick. But the mother took some research, and eventually she went to see the specialist, who took an informed approach that allowed her to create an environment in which her daughter could flourish. This is what we aim to do with web psychology. It explains why we do certain things, even if those things are irrational. It provides insights into how we relate online, the people that you're trying to reach, and it allows us to create a more persuasive environment for those people. So I'm going to whiz through this a little bit. A lot of the things that we do online are in order to get people to be influenced to take the steps or the actions that we want them to take. So how do you even start to look at what online influence is? Well, some people say that it's the number of people in your network, how many Twitter followers you have, how many Facebook likes you might have, how many, on LinkedIn, how many connections you have. But it's also your ability to influence key people within those communities, because they will do the work for you. If you create advocates, they will influence their network to do what you want them to do, as long as it's mutually beneficial. So it's actually a measurement of both of these things. The network number and the key people within that network and having influence to access them. So how do you influence people? How do we begin to start persuading people to behave in certain ways? Well, you use web psychology. This is what I've defined it as: the empirical study of how our online environments influence our attitudes and our behaviors. It's research-based, and it draws from all these different areas, and there's plenty more that it draws from, but essentially, there's research being conducted throughout the world in these amazing, very different disciplines, from academics to marketers to what have you. And these are just some of the pieces of research that we can look at to inform how we look at how we behave online. It's about the context of you as individuals and within the wider context of your culture. You all know this brand. They've got over 3,500 products in 200 countries across the world. The word Coca-Cola is the second most popular word after OK, and it has a 94% recognition rate, which is massive. So if you go to any country anywhere, from Afghanistan to Kuwait or to Holland, people will know what Coca-Cola is. Why are they so successful? Well, apart from having a great product, when the internet came in, they weren't only able to adapt their product to local markets or their marketing to reflect cultural interests, they also did it online. I want to give you a real-life example of what they did in Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea had Coca-Cola in their shops. There wasn't much electricity at the time, and so the Coca-Cola was served hot because it was a hot country. So they used to drink hot Coca-Cola. Sales were going really well. And Coca-Cola said, well, great, let's send you some refrigerators so that you can enjoy cold Coke like the rest of us across the world. They sent the refrigerators. Sales plummeted. They crashed. Sales went down. Coca-Cola said, this is crazy. Why on earth have the sales dropped? And they realized that it's because Papua New Guineans were saying, well, this is crazy. This isn't how we have Coca-Cola. What are you talking about? Cold Coca-Cola? That's mad. So they took the fridges back out, and sales returned to normal. That's an example of globalization. And also the example of kind of web colonialization, when we impose our views on other cultures that don't necessarily mix. They also do this in their websites. I've written about this in my book, and this is just a selection of some of the websites that they have for different countries across the world. I'd be interested to see how this compares to the Portuguese website. So in Germany, you can see it's a very extroverted website, lots of very highly saturated bright colors, and they reflect the cultural interest at the time, which was football. So they keep it up to date by cultural interest. China, completely different website. Just before I took this screen grab about a year ago, they actually had a website that was justified to the top left of the screen, and it was very, very minimalist. And I'm wondering if that's because of the change in connection speeds. But the point is they do their research. Japan, for me as a Brit, this is way too much information. But this is the kind of stuff that Japanese market responds very well to. And South Africa. Here it's around authority. We've been around for 125 years. And also the message is around recycling. So again, reflecting cultural interests. What I'm trying to get at with showing you these slides is that consumers, us, and the people that you're trying to target, are increasingly becoming aware of one-size-fits-all solutions and rejecting them. They've realized that they want stuff, we all want stuff, that reflects our own individual and cultural needs. Which means that if you want to succeed in any way online, you have to localize your business and your message to the people that you're trying to target, which means that you have to research your audience, especially if it's your own country, because you have all these presumptions about how we like to be given information, and that changes based on our gender, based on our age, based on our digital literacy, and not everyone within a single given country will share our own preferences too. So wherever you're targeting, research your audience first. I want to talk a little bit about risk, trust, and privacy. A lack of trust has been cited across a whole lot of research as being the first most important factor in stopping people from buying stuff online. Whether that's a pair of chinos or, a new laptop, whatever. But it's been related to the fact that we have a lack of face-to-face personal interaction. There was a psychologist called Mehrabian, who is Iranian, who is widely misquoted as saying that most behavior is nonverbal, and that means body language. He did do some research in this field, but part of the stuff that's missed is the fact that most of the way in which we communicate with one another happens outside of just the words that we're using. So it can be the tone of voice, it can be the speed at which we speak, the way that we move our arms, the way that we smile at people or look into people's eyes, even probably the way that we pick up each other's scent, pheromones. We're all animals, after all. So when you're looking at an online medium, a lot of that information is stripped, which is why Skype and video communication is one of the most effective forms of connecting with others, because we gain back a lot of that meaning that otherwise is lost. And there's a few things that stop us from buying online. Again, all relating to relationship. Lack of customer service. We want to feel connected. We want to feel like we're supported. Privacy and security concerns. I don't know if you remember when e-commerce first came out, most people were very, very skeptical of it. More and more we're going online to buy stuff. But still, regardless of price, which people thought would be the primary thing that we look at online, it's got to get the best price, it's actually the service and the privacy and the security of our information that influences most of our choices on where and who to buy from. And the fact that there's no real salesperson, although I suspect that that's for older generations. Interestingly, again, reflecting the link about relationship and this need to connect with other people, it's consumer reviews that have been written by other people who are strangers to us, but they're humans, so there's got to be a connection there, and earned media, stuff that people have liked or endorsed, that get the most trust from us. I was reading some research around the different platforms and how much we trust different information from Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. we found that Facebook had the lowest amount of trust for the information that's given. Twitter was a little bit better, but LinkedIn had around a 66% trust rate for the type of information that we share. And it's kind of the dark horse of the social media platforms. We haven't yet found a way to advertise or monetize LinkedIn explicitly, but it's one of the best, most secure and trusted routes for communicating with others. So just bear that in mind. So when you come to my website, what is it about my website that will make you trust me and my message and what I have to say or sell? Well, we subconsciously scan a website for trust cues. These are things like whether we have a privacy logo on it, so a little logo for PayPal, you know, the padlock, or whether we have endorsements from authority figures. In fact, when new visitors are visiting a website, it's your functionality and the design of a website that will influence whether they feel that they can trust you. I've worked in design, web design, and I've also developed websites using HTML and Dreamweaver, so I have an understanding of how often designers and developers have very different agendas. Designers make stuff look pretty, developers make it work. Actually, the human psyche doesn't quite divide things in that way for the most people. The degree to which we find something beautiful, if we find a website beautiful, we rate it as more usable, even if it's not. So we don't separate these things out. And then also reputation makes a big difference if you have a good reputation. Interestingly, there are gender differences here. So men, in general, and I've got to create the caveat here, there are always exceptions, but in general, men are less concerned about privacy than women. They're happier parting with sensitive information like their phone number or their real name. Women are more likely to blog anonymously. We're more skeptical of online information as well. And there is some research that suggests that women are less comfortable online. This doesn't apply to me, I don't know if it does to you, I'd be interested to find out, because it's been created predominantly by males. And even more research has found that women subconsciously prefer websites that have been designed by other women, and that men subconsciously prefer websites that have been designed by other men. So there are these weird things that influence how we engage online that we're not necessarily aware of. So as we want more and more to take our lives online, to shop online, to be able to do more activities online, business, email exchange, etc., you've got to be aware of how your privacy and security concerns are going to be met in the views of the viewer or the user. You can use subconscious cues to make people feel more comfortable. And people across different cultures and different audiences, whether through gender or through age or through country, have very different needs. So for instance, in Scandinavia, because a lot of the stuff that they buy online is imported, there's a different value system as to what they think is good or bad. So it could take quite a long while to get there, but if the quality is good and the returns are free, that's a good customer experience. In Germany, for instance, people tend to like to be able to order a lot of items, have free postage and packaging, and send back most of the items. In the UK, I think, based on my own experience, that we like to be able to get stuff quickly and to send stuff back, but we actually have to pay for returns. So you're starting to see that there are very different requirements for making people happy in different parts of the world. We're talking a lot about personalization in terms of cookies extracting information, targeting certain groups, but culture provides the context in which all of this happens. So if we're going to tailor an experience to a person's needs, you have to be understanding of the fact that global platforms exist within cultural contexts, and that will influence the user's behavior. There's a fantastic researcher from Holland called Geert Hofstede, who spent about 40 years researching different dimensions across different countries. This is kind of like saying that certain countries have personality traits or types. All of our countries have them. These seem to be very stable over time. Despite the fact that technology is quite recent, they seem to persist. And he describes culture as being the collective mental programming of the human mind, which distinguishes one group of individuals from the next. But he talked about power distance. This is the degree to which less powerful members of the society accept inequality. In Portugal, you've got a rating of about 63, which is fairly high. So you're quite comfortable accepting hierarchy for the most part, and accepting that kind of structure. In the Middle East, this tends to be quite higher. And in societies like Scandinavia, this tends to be quite low. Online, power distance expresses itself in such a way that if you're going to get, say, for instance, a subscription option, you can charge people different levels to access different content. Or if you're creating an intranet for an organization, it's acceptable to have people at a junior level access one part and a senior level access another. It's about difference in status. The next one is individualism versus collectivism. Portugal scores very low in this one, so you're quite collectivist. You score a 27. So it's about the sense of having we as a group, about having loyalty, strong family ties, great social relationships. Online, if you're going to be working with people in a collectivist culture, the incentives have to be around the group. So it's not so much about what I can get for myself. The UK is quite individualist. It's more about, well, how can we use this? And one of the organisers was telling me about how on Facebook, you do tend to use the group, but then you'll take your online communities offline and you'll meet face to face. That ties into this. In masculine cultures, you tend to find that we're quite competitive, goal-oriented. It's out for ourselves, let's go for it. It's kind of the American culture, the American dream. You can get it yourself if you work for it. Portugal is kind of at the other end. It's a more feminine culture, so it's around quality of life. So you work to live. What's going to make me feel good? How am I going to spend my time? So online, if you're selling someone a dream, it's, well, how do you make my life easier? How can you enrich my experience in a personal, emotional way? You score very, very highly in this one at 104. This measures the degree to which we are comfortable with not knowing about the future. None of us know what the future will hold. Some of us are more comfortable about that than others. So at 104, it shows that actually you prefer to have some certainty, generally speaking. Now, this is quite a mixed crowd because you tend to find every culture across the world, people who are in digital and tech, you're the ones creating the innovation. So if you're talking about a distribution where most of the population sits in high uncertainty avoidance, the chances are that you guys are more towards the risk-taking end of that scale. So it talks about the main part of the population. So in cultures that are uncertainty avoidant, if you're getting them to shop online or if you're getting them to engage in a campaign, it makes sense to let them know what it's about. Be transparent. Show how the structure works. Give them the rules to follow. Make it clear. In the UK, this is completely the opposite, and we tend to prefer stuff that's a bit outrageous. So if someone says something to you that's really provocative, that makes you quite unsure, in the UK, we relish that as a challenge. So you can see there's sort of different ways of responding to one another. This was kind of taken from a philosopher, Confucius, who talked about how we respond to life in general, and long-term oriented cultures tend to prefer a system which is flexible. So they save more. They like to have an emphasis on education. You're quite short-term oriented. In fact, most Western cultures are. So there's more of a focus on tradition, on getting our needs met instantly. So if we click a button, we want instant appraisal. And also, if you're going to be sending something as a campaign, you can incentivize people to get rewards more quickly. But this is the degree to which we will indulge our own urges. So this is hedonism. How much chocolate are you going to eat? How much are you going to go off and have wild flings in your 20s? This kind of measures this. As a rule of thumb, more indulgent cultures tend to be those which have more money. They're more affluent. Restrained cultures tend to be those that have less to spend. And this obviously tracks with the recession. People shift across, but a culture's general feeling will shift across one spectrum or the other. So if you're selling something, you're doing a video campaign online and you're targeting a restrained culture, you might want to say how you can save them money or how you can endorse the beliefs that they already have. Indulgence might be more hedonistic. Get that fabulous car. Buy that mink coat or whatever. So to wrap up this section, consumers and online users, people that we respond to online, expect a coherent and, more than that, an appropriate online experience that reflects their personal needs. Culture has a massive part to play within that, and it changes our behaviors and our expectations. And if you want to understand your users better, you have to understand their cultural context. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I will pass over to Virginia now. Obrigado. Obrigada.